What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video, and today we're going to be discussing which of the three different weapons are going to be stronger between dagger, axe, and sword. So this is a fairly common question that's kind of brought up quite often on Reddit, the official forums, and a bunch of discords that I am a part of. And that is, what offhand weapon is going to be the strongest between dagger, axe, and sword? And this kind of stems from the effects that each of them has. So under the dual wield line, there's twin blade and blunt passive, which grants a bonus depending on which kind of weapon you have. So each axe gives your melee attacks an 8% chance to bleed for X amount of physical damage over 6 seconds. Each mace causes your attacks to ignore 10% of an enemy's physical resistance. Each sword increases your damage done by 2.5%. And each dagger increases your weapon crit rating. I'm not on my dual bar, but it'll increase it by 5% each. So with 2 daggers, it ends up being 10%. So the big question has always been, which one of these is going to be the strongest? So a lot of people seem to think that mace is the strongest, but in reality, where the 10% actually comes from is after basically all the debuffs. So after major breach, or I should say major fracture, minor fracture, so a 10% reduction. So when it says the mace ignores 10% of Ezreal's physical resistance, it's not that each mace provides 10% of 18,200. It's 10% of 18,200 minus any debuffs that are applied. So a mace actually will not usually apply 1820 physical resistance. It'll actually apply closer to around 1,000 or so physical resistance debuff. So maces generally are not going to be very strong overall because you're typically already at the physical the penetration cap. So maces are generally completely ignored when it comes to which of the 4 different weapons are the strongest, which leaves swords, axe, and daggers. Now, one thing that people kind of argue for against the axe is that it's an 8% chance. So it's basically, you can think of it as an additional proc on a proc set, for example. So axes kind of have that disadvantage. They're a proc set, so there's a chance that, it's still a chance that you'll be able to get it. The other thing too is that axe bleeds can actually stack on top of each other. There's no actual cooldown to the axe bleed. So if you happen to basically reapply it before the 6 seconds are up, you basically kind of wasted that first axe bleed, however much you have remaining. So let's say you got it to proc, and then after 3 seconds it procs again. That 3 seconds afterwards for the first axe bleed is actually, it's not present anymore. You basically overwritten it by the second axe bleed. So that's kind of a disadvantage there too. And now for swords, a lot of people think, increases your damage done by 2.5%. That basically means a 2.5% increase in DPS, and that's not how it works. So in the damage equation, damage done is actually a specific factor or variable in that equation. So it's not, it calculates everything and then it takes that 2.5% into consideration. The damage done is actually in a variable already. So when you take that into consideration, when you do the actual math, it normally works out to be a little bit less than 2.5%, just because damage done is all multiplicative with each other. So it does have some decreasing returns the more you stack. So things like minor berserk, major berserk, and minor vulnerability, for instance, they all are lumped in that one variable there. So swords are actually not quite as strong, which leaves daggers. Daggers increase your weapon crit chance, and so there's some kind of arguments for daggers and against daggers as well. So the big one being that it's crit. So you're still kind of at the mercy of the RNG. Hopefully you get better crits. But if you look at the damage equation, increasing crit as long as everything else remains the same still increases your DPS. And it also is kind of an argument for, it depends on the class. So Templars and Nightblades, for instance, have 10% additional crit damage modifier. So increasing crit on those two classes will generally yield better returns compared to Dragon Knight, Sorcerers, and Wardens. So this is a whole bunch of different competing theories, competing thoughts as to which is actually stronger daggers, swords, or axes. So I did do a couple of tests here on my stamina Nightblade. Actually, let's stay here so I can show you guys what I did. So what I basically did was I used your typical stamina Nightblade build. So 2-piece Selene, 5-piece Reliquin, and then Advancing Ukeda on the front bar. And I did Nern Honed on the main hand, Precise on the offhand, and then I had infused Maelstrom Bow with poison damage on the back on the bow bar. Enchants remain exactly the same. So Disease on the front main hand, I should say, and weapon damage on the offhand. Basically, what I did was I just swapped out this offhand. So I swapped it out with a sword, or I swapped it out with an axe, and they were all the same traits. They were all precise. They all had weapon damage enchants on them. And I did 5 parses for each of the different offhand weapons. So we always had one dagger. It's commonly and regarded that you want one dagger, at least one dagger when you're dual wielding. The question is, of course, do you want 2 daggers or do you want that second weapon to be an axe or sword? So I did do a couple of parses here. So we have dagger, axe, dagger sword, and of course I did 5 parses on each, averaged them, and got a standard deviation. So you can see here that it dagger blows the rest out of the water. It's a very clear winner here, just how much DPS you pulled, and it's not kind of an anomaly. You can see I did do 5 parses for each, and it's just the additional crit chance that you get, the 5% additional crit chance you get, is very, very strong, at least for a non-Khajiit stamblade. Now, obviously, this might change if you are not a Templar, if you are a Khajiit, but generally speaking, it does seem like dagger does win out over dagger axe and dagger sword, with sword being the outright worst, losing to the axe by 1k and losing to the dagger by almost 3k. So that's kind of where everything stands right now. Now, that being said, like I said, this is very specific. This is only for Nightblades that are non-Khajiits. Khajiits get 8% additional weapon crit. They don't have any max stamina, unlike Wood Elves and Red Guards, however. So that might change the math a little bit there. And then if you're not a Nightblade, so if you are a Warden, for instance, or a Sorcerer, you don't get the 10% additional crit damage bonus, so that might drop the effectiveness of Dagger a little bit more here. But generally speaking, with such a large gap, I don't think that it'll make that big of a difference. I did do some math on the Mondays calculator that I released quite a while back. I think it was 2 or 3 months ago now, and it does still seem that 2 daggers still wins out over dagger axe and dagger sword. It's a little bit hard to kind of make that comparison because axe is very RNG, but dagger does seem to be the strongest. There is an argument, however, for Khajiits. So with Khajiits, you might actually want to run an axe instead, just because the additional 8% crit chance that you get does kind of make up for the loss in 5% crit that you lose from running a dagger. But again, that's still kind of up to you. Generally speaking, dagger is always going to be a safe combination of weapons. Dagger axe is a decent one if you are a Khajiit, but I would avoid using dagger sword unless you only have a sword to use. So basically, if you have a dagger and a sword and nothing else, then by all means, go ahead and use that. But you can see the DPS difference here is fairly substantial here. So you will want to swap that sword out for either an axe or a dagger as soon as you can. So this is just a pretty quick test, pretty quick video as to which offhand you want to use. So you always want to use at least one dagger, and if you have that second dagger, definitely go ahead and use that. Axe is going to be your second best option, followed by swords and then maces. So I will be redoing these tests again and probably release a follow-up video of doing all the different possible combinations. So, a Khajiit stamblade, a non-Khajiit stamblade, which I have here, a Khajiit, probably a Khajiit sorc, and then a non-Khajiit sorc. So that way guys can kind of know which, if you fall into one of these 4 categories, which combination of weapons is best. But I figured I would release this right now while I have this data, just so you guys can get a sense of where things stand. So again, the best combination, the safest combination, is always going to be dagger followed by dagger axe. So that is it for this theory crafting video. If you guys have any questions or comments about it, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And like I said, I will be doing the other 3 possible combinations. So a Khajiit Nightblade, a Khajiit sorc and then a non-Khajiit sorc, so you guys will know what weapons you want to use depending on which of the 4 different categories you fall into. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.